I've never been the type to believe in haunted houses or urban legends. Ghosts, demons, spirits. Those were just stories people told to make themselves feel special, or to explain away things they didn't understand. I used to laugh at horror movies, pointing out all the ridiculous decisions the characters made. But moving into that house, the one with the attic, changed me. It was a rental I found online. A cozy, slightly run-down place in a quiet neighborhood, the kind of house that felt lived in, with creaky floors and faint cigarette stains on the walls. It wasn't perfect, but it was cheap, and after my last breakup, I needed somewhere to start over. The landlord, a wiry man with a nicotine cough, handed me the keys and muttered something about the place being better than most. He didn't linger. He barely looked me in the eye. At the time, I didn't think much of it. For the first week, everything was normal. I worked, came home, microwaved frozen dinners, and collapsed into bed. The house creaked at night, but that was expected. Old houses shift, they settle. Sometimes pipes groan. I told myself all of that, but then I started hearing it. It began on the 8th night. Around 2 a.m., a soft thump from above my bedroom. Not the kind of creak you'd expect from settling wood. This was distinct. A dull, heavy sound, as if something had dropped onto the attic floor. I froze in bed, listening. Another thump, then silence. I laughed nervously to myself, convincing myself it was just a raccoon or maybe a squirrel that had somehow gotten inside. I pulled the blankets tighter and forced myself back to sleep. The next day, I bought traps and set them up in the attic. It wasn't easy. The pull-down ladder groaned like it hadn't been touched in years, and the air up there was stifling with dust. My flashlight beam cut through cobwebs and boxes, but I saw no signs of animals. Just old trunks, yellowed newspapers, and forgotten junk. No nests, no droppings, nothing. That night, the noise came again. Thump, drag. It wasn't just a drop this time. It sounded like something heavy being pulled slowly across the attic floor. I sat up in bed, heart pounding, straining to hear. The dragging stopped, then fought to faint, almost inaudible, a whisper. Not words, just breath. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. By morning, I was exhausted and angry. I called the landlord, demanding to know if anyone else had access to the property. He swore no. I asked about the attic. Had anyone ever complained about noises? He coughed, muttered something about old houses making sounds, then quickly changed the subject. That night, I stayed up deliberately. I sat in bed with my phone camera pointed at the ceiling. Midnight passed, then 1. At 2, right on cue, the noises began. Thump, drag, but this time it didn't stop. The dragging went on for what felt like hours, back and forth, slow and deliberate. I recorded it, though the playback caught nothing but faint static. My phone mic didn't pick it up, but I heard it. I swear I did. The next day, I checked the attic again. Nothing had moved. No boxes out of place. No footprints in the dust. But there was something new. On the far wall near the rafters was a handprint. Small like a child's. Pressed into the dust, clear as day. I backed down the ladder so fast I nearly fell. I tried to reason with myself. Maybe it was old. Maybe I hadn't noticed before. But the dust had been thick, undisturbed. This was fresh. That night, the noises grew bolder. Thump, drag, whisper, and then footsteps. Light, deliberate steps pacing back and forth directly above me. I lay in bed, every muscle locked, staring at the ceiling as the steps traced the length of my room. Paused, then returned. Back and forth. Back and forth. At one point, they stopped directly above my bed. Silence. Then, one slow knock on the ceiling, right above my head. I nearly screamed. The next morning, I called the police. I told them I thought someone had broken in, maybe was living in my attic. 2 officers came, checked the whole place, including the attic. They found nothing. No signs of forced entry. No bedrolls. No food wrappers, nothing. One of them gave me a sympathetic look and said, "Old houses. You'd be surprised what sounds they make." But as they turned to leave, I noticed something. The attic ladder. It had been pulled down when I woke up that morning. I never pulled it down. I started locking my bedroom door at night. It didn't help. The noises grew louder, more aggressive. Some nights it sounded like scratching against the attic floorboards. Other nights like someone was crawling, dragging themselves across the wood. Once I woke up to the sound of humming. a soft, tuneless melody drifting down from above. I pressed my pillow over my ears until I couldn't breathe. I thought about moving out, but I couldn't break my lease without losing thousands. And besides, something in me needed to know, needed to understand what was happening. So I set up a camera. I propped my phone in the corner of my bedroom facing the attic door. I left it recording while I slept. The next morning I checked the footage. For the first 2 hours, nothing. Just me tossing in bed. Then around 2:14 a.m., movement. The attic door slowly creaked open, not all the way. Just enough for a sliver of darkness to spill into the hallway. And then, a hand. Pale, thin, fingers too long. It gripped the edge of the doorframe, holding it open. The footage cut to static for 3 seconds. When it came back, the attic door was shut again. I deleted the video immediately. I don't know why. Maybe I didn't want proof. Maybe I didn't want anyone else to see. But I knew then, something was up there. The final night I stayed in that house still replays in my head like a broken record. I had just settled into bed, every light in the room on, knife on my nightstand. I told myself I could make it until morning. I'd pack and leave, screw the lease. At exactly 2:37 a.m., the noises began, but this time, it wasn't thumps, it was a voice, a clear, rasping whisper, drifting down through the ceiling. "Why are you in my room?" My blood turned to ice. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The whisper came again, louder. "This is my room." Then footsteps, not in the attic, in the hallway, right outside my bedroom door. The knob rattled, slowly, gently, then turned. I screamed, grabbing the knife, shouting that I'd call the police. The knob stilled, silence, and then, faintly from the attic above, laughter, low, guttural, not a child's voice, not a man's voice, something in between. I bolted. I didn't pack. I didn't grab anything but my phone and keys. I ran into the night barefoot and didn't stop until I was in my car. Engine roaring. I never went back. I left everything in that house. Clothes, furniture, memories. The landlord called weeks later demanding rent. I told him to keep the deposit. Keep it all. But before he hung up, he said something I'll never forget. "You heard him, didn't you?" Click. That was 2 years ago. I live in a different city now, in an apartment with no attic, no basement, but some nights, around 2 a.m., I swear I hear it, a faint thump above me, dragging. And sometimes, when I'm half asleep, a whisper right by my ear. This is my room. I've always been a night owl. While most people were fast asleep, I found comfort in the stillness of late hours, that quiet hum the world seemed to take on after midnight. No traffic, no phones buzzing, no distractions. Just me, my thoughts, and whatever background noise I could find to fill the silence. For years, that background noise was radio, not streaming, not playlists, but old-fashioned AM radio, the kind most people forgot existed. I liked flipping through stations at night, finding odd talk shows or local hosts who seemed to be broadcasting to nobody. Sometimes I'd catch oldies, sometimes sports reruns, but my favorite was stumbling onto the static-filled frequencies in between stations, where voices sometimes bled through faintly from God knows where. It felt like eavesdropping on something I wasn't supposed to hear, and maybe I was. It was last winter when I first found it. I was up around 2 a.m., working on a project, radio on low in the background. I started spinning the dial, looking for something to keep me awake. Music, talk, anything. That's when I landed on it. Static, but not just static. At first it was faint, buried deep beneath the hiss voices. Multiple voices overlapping. Can't hear. They're listening. Get out now. I'm behind you. I froze. The voices were disjointed, broken by static, but they were there. And the longer I listened, the clearer they became. Not like a normal broadcast. It didn't sound like a show. There were no introductions, no ads, no structure. Just frantic voices, some whispering, some shouting, all distorted like they were calling from far away. And then, my name. Clear as day, in the middle of the chaos, someone said my name. Name.
Can you hear us?
I sat bolt upright, staring at the radio. No way. It was coincidence. It had to be. Maybe I misheard. I twisted the dial slightly. The voices cut off into dead static, twisted back, silence. The frequency was gone. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I told myself it was just my imagination. A trick of exhaustion. I'd been up too late, brain-fried, filling gaps in the noise. But some part of me couldn't shake it. The way my name had cut through the static, direct, urgent, like someone calling for help. The following night, I searched for it again. It took me nearly an hour of carefully twisting the dial, but I found it. Same static. Same faint voices. This time the words were clearer. Not safe. Watching you. They know where you are. Can't stop them. I leaned closer, heart pounding. Who's there? I whispered like an idiot, speaking to a radio. The static roared, then quieted, and a single voice, calm and deliberate, answered, "We can hear you." I yanked the power cord from the wall so fast I nearly broke it. For a week I didn't touch the radio. I buried it in my closet, telling myself it was done. That whatever I'd heard was just interference, some weird overlapping of signals. Maybe pranksters. Maybe shortwave enthusiasts bouncing signals around the world. But at night, in the silence of my apartment, I swore I could still hear it. That faint hiss of static, that low murmur of voices. Just out of reach, calling my name. By the 7th night, I gave in. I plugged the radio back in, hands trembling, and turned the dial. The voices came instantly, like they had been waiting. "Thought you left us. We knew you'd come back." "They're here too." I gripped the edge of my desk. "Who are you?" I demanded. For a moment, nothing. Just static. Then, in unison, multiple voices whispered, "You know us." The radio crackled violently. My lights flickered, and then the line went dead. That was the night it spread. I started hearing it everywhere. At work, in the break room, the cheap little TV in the corner flickered with static between channels. Voices bleeding through. In my car late at night, the stereo hissed even when it was off, a faint shh that rose and fell like breath. Even my phone wasn't safe. I'd pick it up to a blank screen, faint static buzzing in the speaker before cutting off. Everywhere I went, I was followed by that sound, and the voices grew bolder. They stopped whispering warnings. Now they described me. Name is driving home. Name is walking faster. Name is afraid. Sometimes they laughed. Sometimes they screamed. And sometimes, worst of all, they went silent, only to return with a new voice. My own, repeating things I'd said earlier in the day, word for word. The final straw came 2 weeks later. I was lying in bed, radio unplugged, phone turned off, trying desperately to sleep. The static had been relentless for days, bleeding into every moment of quiet. And then, my alarm clock, the cheap digital kind I'd had for years, crackled. The speakers hissed, and a voice whispered through it, "Look at the window." My heart nearly stopped. Slowly, against every screaming instinct in my body, I turned my head, and there in the reflection of the glass, I saw them, dozens of pale faces pressed against the window from the outside, their mouths moving in perfect silence. The radio wasn't plugged in. The TV was off. My phone was dead. But in the hiss of the clock, I heard them whisper one final thing. In perfect unison, "We found you." The lights went out, the static roared, and everything went black. I woke up on the floor the next morning, radio sitting neatly on my nightstand plugged back into the wall. It wasn't there when I went to bed. I left the apartment that day. I didn't even pack and just walked out the door and never went back. Now I don't touch radios. I don't own a TV. I don't even listen to music with headphones. But sometimes when the room gets too quiet, I swear I can hear it again. The faint hiss, the voices whispering, calling my name. When I first moved into the apartment complex, I was relieved. After years of bouncing between noisy roommates, rundown rentals, and one awful house with an attic I don't even want to think about, I finally had a place of my own. The building wasn't fancy, but it was quiet, tucked away on the edge of town. My unit had a decent view of the courtyard, a balcony, and neighbors who mostly kept to themselves. It was perfect. At least, it seemed that way. I noticed him on my third night there, the man next door. It was around 11:30 p.m., and I was on my balcony smoking. Across the narrow gap, the balcony of the adjacent apartment was lit by the faint glow of a lamp inside. A man stood there leaning on the railing, cigarette between his fingers. We locked eyes briefly. I gave a nod. He didn't nod back, just stared. It wasn't hostile exactly. Just blank. I went back inside, shaking it off. Maybe he wasn't friendly. No big deal. But I saw him again the next night and the night after, always at the same time. Always standing in the same position, smoking, watching. After a week, it became routine. I'd step out onto my balcony and there he'd be. Never speaking, never acknowledging me. Just smoking, staring, occasionally tilting his head slightly like he was studying me. I tried to break the ice once. I raised a hand and said, "Hey, how's it going?" Nothing. He just exhaled smoke and turned his head away. I decided to stop trying. Some people are just private. But then I started noticing little things like how his light was never on during the day. No movement inside his apartment. No sounds of cooking, no TV, no footsteps. Like how I never saw him leave. I'd watch from my window sometimes in the morning or when I came home from work. His curtain stayed drawn. His door never opened, except at night. At night, he was always there. 2 weeks in, I mentioned him to the building manager while picking up a package. "The guy next door," I said casually. "Seems quiet." "Keeps to himself." The manager looked confused. "Which unit?" 4B, I said. "Right next to mine," her brow furrowed. "That unit's been empty for months." I laughed nervously. "No, it's not. I've seen him. Every night." She shook her head. "No one's leased it since January." "You must be mistaken." I left the office unsettled. That night, when I stepped onto my balcony, he was there. Same spot, same cigarette, same blank stare. I wanted to shout at him, to demand who the hell he was. But my throat went dry, and instead I backed inside and shut the blinds. Over the next few days, things got worse. I started hearing noises through the shared wall. At first it was faint, like dragging furniture. Then it turned into footsteps pacing back and forth. Sometimes knocking. Always at night. Once I heard humming. Low, tuneless. I pressed my ear to the wall, heart pounding, and whispered, "Hello." The humming stopped, and then 3 slow knocks. Right where my head rested, I stumbled back, heart in my throat. The paranoia consumed me. I asked neighbors on the other side of the hall if they'd seen him. Most said no. One older tenant frowned and said, "4B's been empty. Don't go looking for trouble." I even peeked at his door one morning. Dust on the handle. A thin layer of grime on the welcome mat. No signs of life. But at 11:30 p.m., he was always there. Watching. I finally snapped and bought a camera. One of those motion-activated ones you can mount discreetly. I set it up on my balcony, aimed directly at his. That night I stayed inside, blinds shut tight. At 2 a.m., I checked the footage. My balcony was empty. His balcony was empty. But then at 11:32 p.m., the feed glitched. For 3 seconds, static filled the screen, and when it cleared, he was there. Standing on his balcony, staring directly into the camera, smoke curled from the cigarette in his hand. He didn't blink. Didn't move. Just stared. And then, as the camera clicked off after detecting no more movement, he smiled. The first time I'd ever seen him change expression. A wide, unnatural grin. I ripped the camera down and stuffed it in a drawer. The next night, I refused to go outside. I stayed in bed, headphones blasting music, trying to block it out, but sometime after midnight, I woke to a faint sound sliding glass my balcony door. I froze. Slowly, I turned my head. The door was open. Curtains swayed gently in the cold night air, and standing in the doorway, silhouette framed by the moonlight, was him, not on his balcony, on mine. Inside, watching. I didn't scream. I couldn't. I just shut my eyes, praying it was a nightmare. When I opened them again, the door was closed. Locked. He was gone. I moved out the next morning. Packed everything I could fit into my car and never looked back. The manager seemed surprised but didn't argue. When I handed over my keys, I asked one last question. "4B," I said quietly. "You're sure no one lives there?" She frowned. "Positive, why?" I shook my head. "No reason." But as I turned to leave, she muttered something under her breath. "You're not the first. It's been months since then. I live in a different city now, different building, different everything, but I don't go out on my balcony anymore. And at night, sometimes when the air is still, I catch the faintest whiff of cigarette smoke, and I know he's still watching."